In our first reading, this short reading from the book of Sirach, we hear the word wisdom uttered 5 times. But what is wisdom, and how does it differ from a human or scientific knowledge? Wisdom oftentimes in the Old Testament, especially in what we would call the wisdom literature, is not only identified with God, but it's oftentimes identified as God. Times in which it is interchangeable with this foreshadowing or prefiguration of the Son, the second person of the Trinity, and at other times a prefiguration of the Holy Spirit. Even in our reading today, there is some identification of its divine nature, that it is there before time, but in other ways it says that it is created. And perhaps we can just attribute this to the fact that the Jews did not have an understanding of the Trinity, which was only revealed in Jesus Christ. So there's this kind of notion that there is something eternal and divine with wisdom, and yet we can't quite grasp it as identical with God, with the Father. So what is wisdom? For the Jews and for us today, we could say that wisdom is like the blueprint from which all creation is made. It is like the DNA that makes up all that we see, all that there is. The one who then has the blueprint has an understanding of the meaning of things, a deep and penetrating meaning. Not just an understanding of how things are the way they are, but an understanding of why things are the way they are. Not just seeing all the parts and the pieces, but even seeing how those parts and pieces fit together for a whole. Even more than that, seeing how the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Seeing how the whole has a purpose, it has a meaning, it has an end. With human knowledge, we can see all around us, we can see that it's constantly growing at a breakneck speed. Our science, our technology is making advances and progressing each and every day, such that even while in this Old Testament reading they may not have known much, today we have advanced so much farther. It's likely that in time we can know the sands on the shore. We are able to count them. Perhaps we'll be able to count the drops of rain. Perhaps we will be able to number the days. We might even think that we will know the height, the breadth, and the width of creation. We might get to a point in which we can know every square inch of the galaxy. We can push right up to its edge. But even if we could, we still would not know its meaning. In order to understand its meaning, in order to understand its why, we have to go beyond its edge. We have not only are looking from the inside out, but we have to arrive at a place where we are looking from the outside in, to be able to pass beyond time and space in order to encompass the whole thing in our vision. Of course, we can't do that as humans, but we can do that when we begin to participate in divine wisdom. To be able to see things, hear things, understand things the way that God sees, hears, and understands. I was talking with one of our parishioners last week after Mass, and she said that she heard a question posed which caused her to think back on her own past. She said, somebody had asked, what is the most important, what is the most significant day in your life? It's a great question. And I suggested to you all to think back on your own lives. What is that most important, most significant day? Maybe it is something that is characterized by a great sense of joy, your marriage, the birth of a child or a grandchild. Hopefully those are joyful moments for you all. Maybe it's a sorrowful moment. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one that significantly changed your life. Maybe it was some sort of drastic upheaval, moving, changing jobs, health, finances, something that changed the course of your life from that point forward. Maybe it's any one of those days that is the most important or the most significant. I would suggest to you that the most important, the most significant day of your life is today. Not only in that cliche kind of way that today is the first day of the rest of your life and what you do is going to change it from this point forward, but the fact that God is not the God of the past. He is the God of the present. And that doesn't exclude all of those moments that have happened before. But in some ways, it takes them all up. It bundles them together to make them even more fruitful, more mature today. Not just seeing them as parts and pieces of your history, but seeing how they are brought together in a whole. You see, so often we look at our past with that human knowledge, that human understanding, and we see all of the details like a reporter reporting on an event. I know when it happened, I know how it happened, I know with whom or where. I can tell you all of the details. But if that's the only way that I am remembering it, then it's just an event that's locked in the past. It's like a snapshot that is to forever remain stagnant and stale. But if we can look at it with the wisdom of God, we see how it is saturated with meaning, that each day it's unfolding and teaching us something more. It's bearing more fruit as I think back on it and reflect on it, such that it is more fruitful for me today than it was back then or any day in between. I think I might have mentioned this to you all before, but it bears repeating. That in recent reflection, our Holy Father, Pope Francis, contrasted two ways of recollecting the past. He said one is often done more in the West, and the other one is often done more in the East, according to those that have Romance languages or derivatives of Latin. He would say in the West, when we think about recollecting the past, we use the word remember. At its root is mem, or something to do with the mind. We oftentimes remember the past according to all of the facts, all of the details, the when, the where, the how, the who. But he says in the Latin languages, they have a different word for recollecting the past. The word that they often use is recordar, and at its root is the heart. This is how we tap into God's wisdom, not just recollecting the past, those significant, important events according to the details of the mind, but how is it that it resonates within the heart, the very place within us that God dwells?